Hello, everyone. My name is Desiree, and I want to welcome you to my Forging Stories of Glory podcast. In this podcast, we are going to be talking about all things writing and helping you go from having an idea to having a published book in your hands. We're going to primarily focus in on fiction writing, but there will be some times when I talk about nonfiction writing as well. And before we dive into all the nitty gritty of the ins and outs of writing, I want to share with you my own personal writing journey. I've been writing since I was in middle school, and it was my way of processing my thoughts and emotions. It was my way of escaping the world around me. It was a hideaway in a lot of places, and it was something that I did mostly like in the private sectors of my own room and my own thoughts. I didn't always share my writings with everyone, except for the school assignments that we were given, but I wanted to at some point, someday, share these beautiful, like imaginative worlds that I was building with the rest of the world. When I went to school, I majored in psychology and I dual minored in creative writing and Japanese. And with my creative writing minor, I kept thinking, okay, I'm going to write my story. I'm going to write my story. I'm going to get it out there, and it's going to be published, and people are going to love it. It's going to be great. And when I graduated school, I, like many other people, had to look for a job to pay bills and pay back student loans. And in the midst of going through life trying to figure out what it was I wanted to do, because by the time I graduated school, I had no idea of how to make writing a career. I had just gotten my bachelor's in psychology, and I had thought, oh, I'm going to be a guidance counselor, and writing will be something that I do on the side. And then I got to spring semester my senior year, and I realized I did not want to be a guidance counselor. Great time to realize that. But I was spending all my time trying to figure out what it is I wanted to do, that I wasn't doing a lot of writing. Like writing was sporadic here and there, but it wasn't my focus. And one day I was driving home from work, and I was thinking about a message that my pastor had shared. We're going through the book Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts by Doctors Les and Leslie Parrott. And while we were going through that book, my pastor was talking about when you come into marriage, you should come in with a marketable skill. And I was sitting there thinking, what is my marketable skill? I had friends who had like big adult jobs. They were, in finance and corporate and all these other like big adult important things. And I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, I work at Panera and I'm trying to figure out what I actually want to do with my life. If I maybe want to try to do counseling, like I originally thought. Do I maybe want to be a missionary? I had no idea. I was still trying to figure that out. And as I was driving, I was praying and I was asking the Lord, what is my marketable skill? And he said writing. And at first I was like, writing. Okay. Oh, are you sure? Are you sure you don't mean like business or accounting, something more like lucrative and adult? And he said, no, writing. And that's when he gave me the idea for my first book. And when he gave me the idea, I was so excited because this was a topic that I had done a lot of research on previously. It was something that I was very passionate about and it was close to my heart. So I was like, okay, let's do this. We're going to start writing and we're going to go for it. And for a few months, I was so super fired up. I was excited. I was like, yes, we're going to write and we're going to get this book out. It's going to be great. And then after a few months, I started to stall. I started to get writer's block and I started to doubt myself and doubt my ability. Like, yes, I had gone to school for creative writing, but I was still struggling with trying to get this story written. And what if no one likes what I have to say about this subject matter? What if no one actually wants to read what I have written? And I started snowballing with all these different doubts and fears. But I remembered what I had heard, and I was like, okay, I'm going to keep pressing on. I'm going to keep writing. So I continued to write, but my writing was very sporadic. It was not something that I was disciplined in any way, shape, or form. And it was something that honestly, I kept finding excuses for why I couldn't write. Oh, I'm stuck on this one point here. Oh, I'm really tired today. I don't want to write. Oh, I have this chore to do. Oh, there's this show that I want to watch. Oh, I need to do more research because I hadn't done enough research in, the like 5 years that I'd been reading about this topic. And all these different excuses that I was coming up with was really just me dragging my feet. And it wasn't until January of 2020 that I got the kick in the butt that I needed to really get going. Now, for context, in 2017 was when I first got this idea for this book. So it's been 3 years now. And in 3 years, I had maybe like 30,000 words, which is not a bad size for a book, but it was not the end result by any means. In January of 2020, I did a 31 Days of Wisdom challenge going through the book of Proverbs. And the man who ran it, his name is Pedro Adao. And there was something that he said that really smacked me upside the head. He said that oftentimes men and women of God will pray and ask, what am I supposed to be doing? And the Lord will give us an answer, but we won't do it. And then a few months later, we're like, Lord, what are we supposed to be doing? He also said that sometimes when we have these gifts that we don't do anything with, we just bury them. We end up being like the wicked servant who buried his talent and didn't actually do anything with it. And then final nail in the coffin that he said that really like lit a fire under me was that when we don't act on the assignments that God has given us, one, we are being disobedient, but two, we could potentially be denying someone else their breakthrough when we aren't acting on the things that he has told us to do. And I was like, dang, okay. Um, First of all, we just met, man. Why are you coming at me like this? Um, but what he said was completely right and exactly what I needed to hear. It gave me the kick in the butt to be more serious about my writing. So I started being more disciplined. I started putting in my schedule when I was going to write. And when the world shut down in that April, we all went into quarantine. I continued to write. I finished writing the rest of my manuscript during quarantine. So by the end of that, I had 65,000 words roughly done. I sent it off to a publisher and I had my book out by the end of the year. And I was so excited and I was so proud of myself. All my friends and family were proud. They all bought copies. And some of my friends who don't really read that much, they're like, you know what, you wrote this, so I'm gonna make sure I read it. And they were texting me different excerpts that they were reading that were just like blowing them away. And some of them are like, yeah, I couldn't put your book down. You have a talent here. This is really awesome. This is really great. When's your next one coming out? About that, why do you want a second book? Because I don't know if you realize, but it was a lot to get that first book done and out, and I'm not sure if I have it in me for a second one. But I thought about it and I kept that in the back of my mind. And that first book, by the way, when I first published it, it was called Kaleidoscope: A Journey to Hope. I have recently republished it, and it is now called Shattered: A Story of Heartbreak and Resilience. It is a fiction novel that takes place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and it follows four young girls who have been trafficked and are trying to get away from their Romeo pimp and restart their lives. I wanted to write the story to raise awareness about human trafficking, and I also wanted to show God's heart for justice. I wanted to inspire hope and show what could be if people were aware of what the signs were. And I wanted to write it from a first person narrative so they could get a feel for, okay, this is the mindset that someone who has been through this is at. And this is the mindset that they were at before they were trafficked, which made them vulnerable. That book I will talk about again a little bit later, but that was my very first book. And when my friends were talking about, hey, when's your second book? And I was kind of hesitant, like, I don't think there is a second book. Like, Lord told me to write, and I wrote that first book, and that was it. That was done. Um, months went by and I found myself on a webinar, and the host of that webinar was talking about writing. And he asked a few questions that got my wheels turning, and I started to realize like I have another story in me. I have my own story of different things that I've been through in life that I can share. Now I know what some of you are thinking. You're a millennial. What do you mean you have things in your life that you can share in like a memoir or something like that? I went through a 10-year healing journey with the Lord, um, mostly involving my mental health, but also my, I don't want to say mental well-being, but that's the only way it's coming across for me right now, where I had to shed a lot of lies that I was believing about myself, and a lot of low self-esteem, a lot of other like baggage that I was carrying that I just was not dealing with, because for many years growing up, I was a bottler. I was someone who bottled all the pain that she felt, because I didn't want to burden people, and I didn't want to worry them. And I was like, no, no, I can fix this. I can figure it out. We can work this out. And when I got to college, that was proven to be wrong for me in a lot of ways. And when the Lord was taking me on this journey, it was very painful going through, but coming out the other side and be like, okay, I've gone through that. I'm good, and I'm healed, and I'm whole, and also learning that healing is like a continual journey. But the bulk of the mess that I was in was dealt with during this 10-year like time period. And Laura's like, okay, you're gonna write about this. And I was like, okay. Um, I went to school for fiction writing, and you're telling me to write a nonfiction book. Great. Yeah, I can do that. I ended up enrolling in self-publishing school and learning the ins and outs of memoir writing, and learning how to, like write effectively, how to find an editor, cover design, and self-publish my work, but still look professional while going out into the marketplace with this book. So I started working on that, and I had that book done in a matter of months. And after that second launch, I had these other ideas for like other nonfiction things that I wanted to do. And I was trying to navigate where I was supposed to, what my niche was supposed to be. Because again, I went to school for fiction writing, and I had been building these like fictional and fantasy worlds, and I really loved them. But now there were these nonfiction things that were coming up, and I was trying to figure out, okay, which lane am I supposed to be in here? Um, about a year later, I got invited to be part of another book called Broken Chapters, 21 Testimonies of how God Rewrites your life story. And I talked about what it was like watching my parents go through four divorces. I talked about the identity that I had as a child of pain, and how I had to shed that and allow God to rewrite that to be an identity of a child of love. And through that journey, I got to write my testimony there. And at first I was excited. I was like, okay, this is going to be good. This is going to be great. I wrote the rough draft. I rewrote the rough draft after getting feedback from beta readers, and I was feeling pretty good about it. And then a week before our launch date, all these doubts started coming in, and all these fears started coming in. Oh, what if so and so reads and they don't like what I wrote? Oh, what if so and so reads it and is offended, or this, that, or the other thing? And all these doubts were swirling so much that I almost called our project manager to tell her to pull my chapter. I almost completely backed out of it. And how I got through that was actually I started singing a song. And I don't know if I will ever like publicly release this song. It might just be like my own personal thing for like encouraging myself. But the premise of the song, the idea behind it was encouraging myself to spread my wings and to put forth the words that I had been given. And when I wrote it, I intentionally wrote it in a way where I was trying to be honoring to all parties involved. Um, to the good, the bad, the ugly. I did not want it to be any type of like revenge piece or anything like that. I wanted it to be something that this is how I healed, and this is how I hope to encourage and inspire others. And a lot of the feedback that I got from readers was that they got that impression, that they felt the honor. So I kept singing until all these fears and all these doubts went away. And I continued to go through with the publishing process for this book. And there are people who I have never met who ended up sending me messages or like commenting on Amazon what my chapter meant for them and how much it encouraged them and inspired them. And again, I almost backed out of this. But it really put in perspective for me what Pedro had said a few years ago, where your obedience can provide someone else the breakthrough that they need. Fast forward, I continue to write, continue to work on some things in both fiction and fantasy, but also with nonfiction as well. I ended up writing 4 workbooks geared towards helping people write out their stories for nonfiction, for memoirs, for fiction, and for fantasy. And I also wrote a short story that will be part of a uh, trying to think of the correct word. It'll be part of a collection of short stories written by several talented men and women in the fantasy and sci-fi sector. And these stories are amazing. I am so excited for when this gets out and into the world for people to read. There's a fantasy series that I am currently working on that my short story leads to, and ultimately by this time, April of 2026, I started off wanting to write 1 book someday, and I now have 10 books under my belt in fiction, fantasy, and nonfiction. Nonfiction books were not something that were even on my radar, but are tools that are in the hands of people, and those tools are inspiring them. They are helping them with getting their own stories out and helping them on their own healing journeys. Um, Fast forward, well, not fast forward, backtracking just a little bit to November of last year. Actually, it was October of last year. And some friends of mine, they said, hey, we're going to put together this thing called the Kingdom Book Awards. And the idea behind the Kingdom Book Awards is we want to honor Kingdom voices, and we want to honor them across the spectrum in multiple different categories. We want to have a full out gala, and everyone's going to be dressed in black tie, and it's going to be a gold carpet event. There will be different publishers and publicists there. Do you want to participate? And I was like, yeah, sure. This sounds great. This sounds amazing. And initially, like my thought process was, okay, I'm gonna tell like all these people about it, and maybe I might submit something. I mean, I have 10 books, so like I might submit 1 or 2. And there was 1 book in particular, my book Shattered, that I was debating like, should I submit it? Should I not submit it? Is this like really the right flavor for it? And I kept debating back and forth. And I was driving home, and the Holy Spirit spoke to me. He's like, so are you going to actually submit it, or are you going to talk yourself out of it? And I was like, okay. Well, point made, point made. So I submitted that and 1 other book called Live with Purpose. Live with Purpose is something that I initially wrote for my church, and I didn't really have any plans to do with it outside of that. And the Holy Spirit kind of tapped me on the shoulder. He's like, no, no, submit that one too. I have some other things I want to do with that one. I was like, okay. And Live with Purpose, the premise or the thought behind that book is I talk about what it means to live a kingdom filled life on the inside and on the outside. And on the inside, I talk about the importance of having a renewed mind, the importance of having thoughts about yourself that God has about you, where He says, you know, like you are a strong and brave warrior. The story of Gideon comes to mind, where he tells him that, and Gideon is like, Are you sure you have the right person? Because I'm definitely hiding in a wine press over here, trying to make sure that our enemies don't see that I have food. Um, but God was speaking about him, what he saw. And there are countless other examples in the Bible of this and how we can apply that in our own lives. So I talk about that, and I talk about the importance of having a healed heart through various different caricatures of an unhealed heart. And I talk about, like not being a bad news Betty or distrusting Donovan, and how those things can actually hinder us in the long run in the relationships that we want to build, and the lives that we want to build for ourselves. I talk about what it means to identify ourselves like as children of God, as His royalty, as co-heirs, what that looks like, what that means. I talk about what it means to allow the fruit of the Spirit to take hold, take root, and come to life within us in terms of peace and in joy. I talk about how to hear and discern God's voice for ourselves, and I also talk about how to figure out what your purpose and kingdom assignment is. That is the Live with Purpose book. So that and Shattered are both finalists for the Kingdom Book Awards in two different categories. Live with Purpose is in the ministry category, and Shattered is in the arts category. Arts being, like fiction and poetry. I'm incredibly blessed and honored to be able to say that two of my books are finalists, and I find out on the 25th of April if I actually win, which is fun and exciting. I share all this so you know a bit more about like my own writing journey, some of the lessons I've had to learn, some of the struggles I've had with writer's block that I've had to overcome, with doubts that I've had to overcome, with being disciplined and making sure that I'm actually keeping a writing schedule. Because if I don't keep a writing schedule, none of my books are getting written. And I share this to let you know that as we continue on with this podcast, I'm going to be sharing some of the tips and tricks for, like keeping a writing schedule, for beating writer's block, and for overcoming the imposter syndrome that tries to keep us from writing. I'm going to share different tips and tricks on how to write your stories so that when people read them, they don't want to put your stories down. They stay engaged and they are sending you messages or writing on Amazon, wow, this person really sees me. This person really knows me, or I really found myself in this character. I really saw myself in this story, even though it's like a complete other world that this author built. I was able to relate to this character because of how they wrote them. I'm going to be teaching you that through this podcast and more. So stay dialed in. Stay dialed in with me. I not only have written 10 books, but I am also a book coach and a publisher. And I have helped other people find and write and develop and publish their stories. And I want to help you do the same. So tune in. Stay tuned in. We're going to be meeting once a week, and we're just going to be talking about all things writing. And if there is something specific that you want to see, something specific that you have questions on, by all means, leave me a comment in the chat because I would love to know more because I want to be able to serve you effectively. Thank you for listening to the Forging Stories of Glory podcast. If you are looking for something good to read, I highly suggest you check out my books on my website, DesireeThiesa.com. There you will find speculative fiction, stories about dragon riders, a few memoirs, and everything in between. If you are someone who is looking to start writing your own story and are looking for some additional resources and help, I do have some workbooks available on my website. You can get PDFs of them, and they will walk you through all the ins and outs of writing a story that is memorable, inspiring, and engaging. I help you figure out your story structure, your theme, and how to weave it in throughout your story. I help you figure out how to develop characters that people fall in love with versus characters that are one dimensional and flat. They also provide a self-publishing guide with resources available in it as well. So definitely check those out. Again, my website is DesireeThiesa.com. Thiesa spelled Theassa. And if you are someone who would like one-on-one coaching or group coaching, I do have information for that on my website as well. So definitely check it out. And we look forward to seeing you again on our next podcast.